These are my step-by-step tips on how to overcome that beginner barrier and start taking professional-looking photos. Let's get right to it. Step 1. Composition. Composition is like balance is to riding a bike. If you don't have balance, it doesn't matter if you have a super expensive bike. So don't buy that expensive camera or gear until you learn how to master composition. Composition is basically how everything is arranged within the photo. You can arrange the photo by moving the objects or camera. Try out different angles, learn about the rule of thirds, horizon placement, leading lines, etc. It will make your photos look much better and suddenly photography is way more fun. Step 2. Light. A photographer is depending on light. Without it, there wouldn't be any photos. So do not underestimate what light can provide. But don't let this fool you. The more brightness doesn't necessarily mean a better photo. This is a typical beginner trap. When I'm taking photos on a foggy, cloudy or even rainy day, people often shrug at me and asks why I'm taking photos in such bad weather. Well, it's because the light is soft and smooth. The clouds remove and diffuse this hard and unflattering contrast. Learn the difference between hard and soft light, low-key or high-key, and ways to make that light look professional. But there's much more to light than just hard and soft light. You can play around with it and find cool ways to illuminate your photos. Before we go ahead to step 3, I would like to remind you of subscribing to my channel if you like the video. It motivates me a lot to create more content. Let's move on. Step 3. Depth. This relates to composition, but then again more or less everything does. There are different ways to add depth. It could be by layers, lighting, focus, etc. But what I find to be the easiest way is to think of making your photos look 3D. A photo taken of a house from the front will make both the photo and house look flat. Instead, try to take some steps to the side and the motif will look more 3D, so to speak. I'm not saying that flat photos are bad looking, but it's good to have different alternatives. Step 4. Exposure. Exposure and lighting works in different ways, so don't let the names confuse you. Think of lighting as the light outside of your camera and exposure the light coming into your camera. Okay, I admit that my description probably isn't technically correct, but at least that's how I like to think of it. Anyways, the two main things to learn about in order to achieve good exposure is shutter and aperture. By now you could have been fine by using the auto settings on your camera, but once you feel comfortable in your skills, you will sooner or later need to learn about exposure and how it will affect your photos. As I said, shutter and aperture is very important, and then there's ISO, which is also essential but will not affect the photo in the same way. The shutter speed is vital to reduce or increase motion blur. The aperture is mainly to control the depth of focus and amount of light sipping into your camera. These two settings correlate heavily with each other, and once you learn how to master them, you will have much better control over your photography. So, to utilize these steps, I recommend you to start with step 1 and work your way up to step 4. And this might be controversial, but don't be afraid to use the auto settings until you reach step 4. I mean, sure, you can learn about exposure first. In fact, you can learn any of these steps first. But I believe composition goes before settings, because to me, a well-exposed photo doesn't really matter if it's badly composed. But that's my opinion. Anyways, if you'd like to support my videos, then like, subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss out. Have a great time now.